The train wheezed to a stop at Dry Hollow Station like a dying beast. Black smoke curling into the endless Wyoming sky. Clara Ellison pressed her face against the window, watching the dust devils dance across the platform. Her reflection stared back, pale skin made paler by 2 days of travel. Dark hair pinned severely beneath a practical bonnet, and eyes that held too much of everything her mother had always warned her about. "End of the line, miss," the conductor called, his voice rough as the landscape outside. Clara gathered her worn leather satchel, the one containing her most precious tools: drafting compass, rulers, pencils sharpened to needle points. Her trunk would follow. Hopefully, everything she owned in the world was either in her hands or in that battered trunk. 28 years of life reduced to luggage and hope. The other passengers filed past her, miners with faces carved by hardship, a preacher clutching his Bible like armor, 2 saloon girls with painted smiles and tired eyes. Nobody looked at her twice. Good. She'd had enough of being looked at in New York. The platform boards creaked under her boots as she stepped down. October wind cut through her traveling dress, a sensible gray wool that had seemed appropriate in the city but now felt like wearing shadows in a land that demanded color: the burnt orange of rock formations, the endless blue dome overhead, the golden grass that stretched forever. You, Clara Ellison, a boy, maybe 12, appeared at her elbow, freckles scattered across his nose like stars. "I am. Mrs. Quinn sent me. Said to tell you the room's ready at the boarding house." He eyed her satchel with curiosity. "You really one of them artist ladies from back east?" "I'm a technical illustrator," Clara corrected gently. "I draw plans for buildings and bridges." The boy's face scrunched. "That's men's work." "So I've been told." The words came out more bitter than intended. She fumbled in her pocket for a penny, pressed it into his palm. "Thank you for the message." He scampered off, leaving her alone on the platform. The town stretched before her, one main street of false-fronted buildings pretending to be grander than they were. The Brass Bell Saloon dominated one corner, its doors swinging with the promise of whiskey and forgetting. Across from it, a general store with windows full of necessities. A church steeple pierced the sky at the far end, white paint peeling like old skin. Clara had memorized the telegram by heart. Position available. Room and board included. Town needs someone with your skills for survey work and documentation. Railway company has plans. It had seemed like Providence after months of closed doors in New York, after being told she was too ambitious, too emotional, too everything except what a woman should be. She started walking, heels clicking on boards that gave way to packed dirt. Men lounged outside the saloon, watching her progress with the lazy interest of cats. She kept her chin up, eyes forward. She'd learned that much: never show weakness, never invite commentary. "Well, well," a voice, oily as lamp fuel. "What have we here?" Clara didn't turn. A hand caught her elbow, spinning her around. The man was typical of his kind vest, straining over a soft belly, breath sour with noon whiskey, eyes that saw her as entertainment. "Don't believe we've been introduced. Miss, name's Holbrook. I own the Brass Bell." "How fortunate for you." She tried to pull free, but his grip tightened. "Now, that's not friendly. Pretty thing like you ought to—" "Let go." Her voice came out steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "Or what?" He laughed, pulling her closer. Other men gathered, sensing sport. That's when she saw him. He came out of the livery stable leading a spotted mare, moving with the unconscious grace of someone who lived in his body rather than just inhabited it. Taller than most, with shoulders that spoke of real work, not saloon posturing. Dark hair curled from beneath a weathered hat. His clothes were clean but worn, denim and leather broken in by use. He took in the scene with one glance, and something shifted in his face. Not anger exactly, but a kind of settling, like a mountain deciding where to cast its shadow. Holbrook. Just the one word, but it carried weight. The saloon owner's grip loosened. This ain't your concern. Thatcher. The cowboy Thatcher moved closer, leading the mare. He didn't hurry, didn't swagger, just walked like he had all the time in the world. Ladies' bags are still at the station? Shame to leave them in this wind. It wasn't a threat. Wasn't even really a statement about bags. But Holbrook let go of Clara's arm, stepping back with a muttered curse. You always did have peculiar notions about what's your business. Holbrook spat. This ain't over. Never is with you. Thatcher touched the brim of his hat to Clara. Station's back that way, ma'am. Porter probably wondering where you went. Clara found her voice. My luggage can wait. I need to find Mrs. Quinn's boarding house. 2 blocks down. Yellow house with blue shutters. He turned to go, then paused. Trunk heavy. I can manage. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Didn't ask if you could. Asked if it was. She studied him, this man who'd intervened without making her feel weak for needing it. His eyes were gray as winter sky, giving away nothing. Yes, she admitted. It's heavy. He nodded, looped the mare's reins around a post. Best get it before someone decides they need what's inside. They walked back to the station in silence. He didn't ask her name, didn't ask why she'd come to Dry Hollow, didn't do any of the things men usually did when they thought they'd earned conversation. The quiet felt strange, but not uncomfortable, like walking beside a deep river. Her trunk sat alone on the platform, looking smaller than she remembered. Everything she owned, every dream she'd refused to surrender. Thatcher lifted it like it weighed nothing, balanced it on one shoulder. Lead the way. The boarding house sat on a side street, paint fresh enough to show pride but not wealth. Blue shutters framed windows with clean glass and lace curtains. A sign hung by the door, Quinn's boarding house, weekly rates, no drinking, no gambling, no exceptions. Clara knocked. The door flew open before her knuckles could rap twice. You'd be Miss Ellison. Martha Quinn was built like a fence post, straight, sturdy, and unlikely to bend for weather or wishes. Gray hair pulled back in a bun tight enough to stretch her features. Eyes sharp as telegraph wire. You're late. The train. Trains are always late. Come in before you let all the warm air out. She spotted Thatcher. Eli, good of you to help. He set the trunk inside the entryway. Straightened. Ma'am? To Clara. He touched his hat again. Welcome to Dry Hollow. Then he was gone, boot heels fading down the street. Clara watched him retrieve his horse, swing into the saddle with economical grace, and disappear around the corner. Don't get ideas about that one, Martha said, closing the door with a decisive click. Eli Thatcher's decent enough, but he's got his own ghosts. Besides, you didn't come here for courting. No, Clara agreed. I came here to work. Good, because this town doesn't suffer fools or fancy women. You do your job, keep your head down, and maybe they'll let you be. Martha's expression softened a fraction. Maybe. Your room's upstairs, end of the hall. Supper's at 6. You miss it. You go hungry. House rules are on the door. Break them. You find somewhere else to live. Clara climbed narrow stairs that groaned under her weight. The hallway smelled of lye soap and old wood. Her room, when she found it, was small but clean. Iron bed with a quilt that had seen better decades. Washstand with a chipped basin. Window overlooking the back garden where chickens pecked at the dirt. She set her satchel on the bed, opened it carefully. Her tools gleamed in the afternoon light, instruments of precision in a world that seemed to value only broad strokes. In New York, she'd been told her work was too detailed, too careful, too much like a man's. The men at the architectural firm had made sport of finding fault with every line she drew, every calculation she made. Miss Ellison thinks she's an engineer. They'd laughed. Next she'll want to vote. She had wanted to vote, wanted to build things that mattered, wanted to sign her name to something that would outlast her. Instead, she'd been relegated to copying others' work, making fair drafts of designs she could improve but wasn't allowed to touch. Until the telegram, until Dry Hollow. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Martha stood in the doorway, holding a bundle of fabric. "Work clothes," she said, thrusting them at Clara. "What you're wearing won't last a week here. These belong to my daughter. She's gone to San Francisco. Won't need them." The clothes were simple split skirt for riding, sturdy blouses, a leather vest soft with wear. Clara fingered the fabric, throat tight with unexpected emotion. "Thank you." Martha waved off gratitude like smoke. "You'll earn it. The railway office opens at 8 tomorrow. Don't be late." She paused at the door. "And Miss Ellison, whatever happened back east that sent you running to the edge of nowhere, leave it there. This town's got enough troubles without borrowing more." Alone again. Clara unpacked slowly. Each item found its place clothes in the wardrobe that smelled of cedar. Tools arranged precisely on the small desk. Her few books on the windowsill. At the bottom of the trunk, wrapped in tissue, lay the one impractical thing she'd brought. A dress of midnight blue silk. The one she'd worn to the Engineers Society ball where everything had gone wrong. She'd been someone's guest, of course. Women couldn't join the society. But she'd worn that dress like armor. Like proof she belonged in those hallowed halls discussing load-bearing walls and suspension cables. She'd even dared to correct a calculation during a conversation about bridge spans. The silence that followed had been deafening. The man whose math she'd fixed a senior partner at her firm had turned red as brick. By Monday, her position had been restructured. By Tuesday, she'd been escorted from the building. Clara hung the dress in the back of the wardrobe, shut the door firmly. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone harder, quieter, carved down to essentials like the landscape outside her window. Tomorrow she'd report to the railway office. Tomorrow she'd begin proving herself all over again. But tonight, as sunset painted the sky in shades of flame and ash, she allowed herself one moment of pure truth. She pressed her palm against the window glass, watching the town settle into evening routines. Somewhere out there, Eli Thatcher was probably tending horses or mending tack or doing whatever silent, competent men did when the day wound down. He'd helped her without making her feel small. That alone made Dry Hollow different from anywhere else she'd been. "I shouldn't want this much," she whispered to the empty room, to the vast sky, to the woman she was trying to leave behind. The want was a living thing in her chest, want for respect, for purpose, for a place where being too much wasn't a sin. But want she did, with a ferocity that scared her. Want with the kind of hunger that had driven her from the safety of familiar failures to this raw place where the wind carried promises and threats in equal measure. The dinner bell rang, pulling her from her thoughts. Time to meet the other boarders. To begin the delicate dance of fitting in while standing out just enough to matter. Time to start becoming whoever Clara Ellison was meant to be in Dry Hollow, Wyoming. She smoothed her traveling dress, pinched color into her cheeks, and descended to face her new life. Outside, the first stars emerged like pinpricks in dark fabric, each one a point of light in the vastness. She thought of Eli Thatcher's gray eyes, steady as stone, and wondered what ghosts Martha Quinn had meant. But that was curiosity for another day. Tonight, she had her own ghosts to put to rest and a future to build from scratch, one precise line at a time. The morning air bit sharp as Clara made her way to the railway office. Portfolio clutched against her chest. She'd risen before dawn, dressed in the practical clothes Martha had given her, and practiced what she'd say to whoever held her future in their hands. The split skirt felt strange but liberating, allowing her to stride rather than mince along the wooden sidewalks. The railway office squatted beside the tracks, all function and no beauty. Paint flaked from its walls like dead skin, and the windows were clouded with coal dust. A sign proclaimed, "Western Pacific Railway Company, Survey Division," in letters that had once been gold. Inside, 3 men hunched over a table spread with maps. They looked up when she entered, their expressions shifting from concentration to confusion to something less pleasant. Help you, miss, the eldest, wearing a vest that had seen better decades, didn't rise from his chair. I'm Clara Ellison. I believe Mr. Hartright is expecting me. That's me. Hartright was younger than she'd imagined, perhaps 40, with a soft look of a man who directed rather than did. You're the illustrator from New York. Technical illustrator, she corrected, setting her portfolio on the only clear spot on the table. I specialize in engineering drawings, survey documentation, and architectural rendering. The third man, lean as a fence rail with eyes like chips of coal, snorted. Fancy words for tracing. Perhaps you'd like to see my work before passing judgment. Mr. Donnelly, site foreman. He leaned back, chair creaking dangerously. And I'll pass judgment as I please. Clara opened her portfolio with steady hands. Though heat climbed her neck, she'd chosen her best pieces, a bridge proposal that had been built though not under her name. Detailed survey maps of Manhattan's new sewer system. Architectural elevations that sang with precision. Hartright leaned forward despite himself. These are quite detailed. Accuracy matters when lives and money are at stake. Clara said, I understand you need someone to document the proposed rail extension through Bitter Creek Pass. Now how'd you know about that? Donnelly's eyes narrowed. That's company business. It was mentioned in the telegram offering me this position. She kept her voice level. Along with the need for someone who could work in difficult terrain and produce drawings suitable for investors back east. Investors. Hartright said the word like it tasted bad. They want pretty pictures to show their wives. Want to feel like they're part of taming the frontier from their parlors in Boston. Then give them accuracy dressed in artistry, Clara suggested. Technical precision that also captures the grandeur of what you're building. The challenge, the achievement. You talk like a man, Donnelly said, but you'll faint at the first rattlesnake. I've dissected cadavers at the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania. The lie came smooth as silk. She'd only attended lectures, but they didn't need to know that. I think I can manage a snake. A sound from the doorway made them all turn. Eli Thatcher stood there, hat in hand, speaking to the secretary. Morning light caught the planes of his face, throwing shadows that made him look carved from the landscape itself. Thatcher, Hartright called. What brings you here? Picking up supplies for the Double Bar Ranch. His gray eyes found Clara, held for a moment before returning to Hartright. Heard you might need a guide for the Bitter Creek survey. Since when do you hire out? Donnelly asked. Thought you were too good for railway work. Something flickered across Eli's face there and gone like heat lightning. Man's gotta eat. Well, we're not ready for that yet. Hartright shuffled papers importantly. Still deciding on our personnel. Clara felt the dismissal coming. Saw it in the way the men exchanged glances. She'd seen it too many times before. But before Hartright could voice it, Eli spoke again. Best decide soon. Snow comes early in the pass. You've got maybe 6 weeks of good weather. We know our business. Donnelly snapped. Just saying. Eli touched his hat brim to Clara. Ma'am. And was gone, leaving a strange emptiness in his wake. Hartright cleared his throat. Miss Ellison, while your work is impressive, I'm not sure you understand what we need. This isn't some city project with hot meals and warm beds. It's rough country, dangerous. I understand perfectly. Clara began gathering her drawings. You need someone who can produce investor-grade illustrations while camping in wilderness, possibly under threat from weather, wildlife, or worse, someone who can make technical measurements while maintaining artistic quality. Someone investors' wives will coo over while their husbands see dollar signs. Well, yes. Then hire me for a trial period, 1 month. If my work doesn't exceed your expectations, I'll leave without complaint. She paused at the door. But when it does exceed them, I expect to be paid the same as any man in this position. She left before they could respond, stepping into sunlight that seemed brighter than before. Her hands shook as she walked away, but her stride stayed steady. She'd either just secured her future or destroyed it. Time would tell. At the general store, she used precious coins to buy a proper hat, work gloves, and a journal for field notes. The proprietor, a German named Muller, barely looked at her as he tallied her purchases. That suited her fine. She was learning the value of invisibility. "You're the artist, lady." A voice behind her, young and curious. Clara turned to find a girl of maybe 16 wearing a dress that had been mended with more hope than skill. Bright eyes and a face meant for laughter, though something in her expression suggested she hadn't had much cause lately. "I'm Clara Ellison." "Josephine Harper. Joe." The girl glanced around nervously. "Is it true you went to college?" "Yes." What was it like, hunger in the question, familiar as a mirror? Clara chose her words carefully. "Difficult, wonderful, like drinking from a fire hose of knowledge while people tell you ladies' minds are too delicate for such things." Joe laughed, short and sharp. "Sounds like here, except for the knowledge part." Her expression sobered. "I work at the hotel laundry, if you need anything washed." "I'll remember that." The girl hurried away as the bell above the door chimed. Clara finished her purchases and stepped back onto the street, nearly colliding with Eli Thatcher. He steadied her with a hand on her elbow, brief and impersonal, though she felt the contact like a brand through her sleeve. "Apologies, ma'am." "Clara," she said impulsively. "My name is Clara." He studied her for a moment, and she had the unsettling sense of being truly seen. Not as a woman out of place, not as an oddity or a challenge, but simply as herself. "Clara," he said it like he was tasting the word. "Pretty name." Heat that had nothing to do with the sun touched her cheeks. "Thank you for what you did in there. With Hartright." "Did I do something?" "You reminded them about the weather, made them think about practicalities instead of just my unsuitability." A smile ghosted across his features. "Wouldn't know anything about that?" "Of course not." She found herself smiling back. "Do you really know Bitter Creek Pass?" "Well, as anyone alive?" His expression darkened slightly. "Better than some who aren't." Before she could ask what he meant, he touched his hat again. "Good day, Miss Clara." She watched him load supplies onto a wagon, movements efficient and somehow graceful. When he drove away, she noticed several women watching from various doorways. Some expressions were knowing, others disapproving. Clara was clearly not the only one who'd noticed Eli Thatcher's particular qualities. "Don't even think it." Martha's voice at her shoulder made Clara jump. The boarding house owner had materialized like a disgruntled spirit. "That man's got more walls than a prison. Besides, you're here to work." "I am working." Clara showed her purchases. "Preparing for field work." Martha sniffed. "Field work, in my day, women knew their place." "In your day, women died in childbirth at 30 and called it God's will." To her surprise, Martha barked a laugh. "Fair point. Come on, let's get you some lunch. You look ready to blow away." They walked back to the boarding house together, Martha pointing out landmarks and gossiping about residents with the casual cruelty of long acquaintance. Clara half listened, her mind on gray eyes and the way Eli had said her name like it meant something. That afternoon, a boy delivered a note. Hartright wanted to see her Monday morning for a trial assignment. She'd have 2 days to prove herself. 2 days to show she belonged here as much as any man with soft hands and hard prejudices. Clara spent the weekend preparing. She studied every map she could find at the small library above the general store. She practiced with her instruments until her fingers moved without thought. She wrote and rewrote sample reports until the words flowed clean and clear. Sunday evening found her restless, walking the edges of town as sunset painted everything gold. She'd always done her best thinking while moving, and Dry Hollow offered plenty of space to move. She'd reached the cemetery, reading headstones in the fading light, when she heard horses. Eli Thatcher rode past, leading a string of 3 horses. He saw her and reined in. Evening walk. Thinking. She gestured at the graves. Lot of young deaths. Hard country. He dismounted, surprising her. My brother's over there. Thomas Thatcher died at 23. The dates on the stone made her breath catch. Only 2 years passed. I'm sorry? Railway accident. Surveying Bitter Creek Pass. He said it flat, factual. But she heard the depths beneath. Understanding dawned. That's why Donnelly said you were too good for railway work. Among other reasons. He looked at her directly. You sure you want this job? It's killed better folks than Hartright. Are you trying to scare me off? Trying to make sure you know what you're walking into. He swung back into the saddle with that unconscious grace. The past doesn't forgive mistakes. Neither does the railway. I don't make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. His voice softened slightly. The lucky ones survived them. He rode off, leaving her among the dead with the weight of his warning. But Clara had been warned before, warned away from education, from ambition, from wanting more than the narrow life prescribed for her sex. Warnings had only ever made her more determined. She walked back through full dark, guided by instinct and starlight. Tomorrow would begin her trial, her chance to prove she belonged in this harsh landscape. She thought of Eli's brother, dead at 23, and wondered what dreams had died with him. Wondered if Eli saw those ghosts when he looked at her maps and instruments. At the boarding house, she found Joe Harper sitting on the back steps, face streaked with tears. What's wrong? Joe swiped at her eyes. Nothing, just my father says I have to quit school, says I'm too old, need to work full time. Clara sat beside her, remembering her own battles for education. How old are you? 15. And you want to keep learning more than anything. Fresh tears came. But what I want doesn't matter. Clara was quiet for a moment, then made a decision that would complicate her life considerably. What if I tutored you evenings, when your work's done? Hope dawned in Joe's eyes. You'd do that. I'd try. Can't promise your father won't object. He won't care as long as the washing's done. Joe grabbed Clara's hand. Thank you. Thank you. Clara squeezed back, feeling something ease in her chest. Maybe she couldn't change the world's mind about women's capabilities, but she could teach one girl at a time that her mind mattered. Later, preparing for bed, she thought about the day's encounters, Hartright's skepticism, Donnelly's hostility, Eli's warnings, Joe's tears, each person seeing her through their own lens of expectation and experience. But tomorrow, she'd show them all something new. Tomorrow, she'd begin drawing her own map in this place where the railroad carved through mountains and dreams died young and gray-eyed cowboys carried their ghosts like shadows. She shouldn't want this much respect, purpose, connection, but she did. And for the first time in months, that wanting felt like strength rather than weakness. The storage room Martha Quinn offered Clara was barely larger than a closet, tucked behind the kitchen where the smell of lye soap and yesterday's stew lingered like unwanted guests. But it had a window facing east, and when Clara set up her drafting table beneath it, morning light would flood across her work like benediction. Used to be where we kept preserves, Martha explained, arms crossed as she watched Clara arrange her tools with the precision of a surgeon. But the cellar stays cooler. $5 extra a month, and you clean up your own messes. That's fair. Clara tested the table's stability. Found it solid enough. Someone had built it from good oak. Joints tight despite age. I'll need shelves for my drawings. Harry Muller at the store does carpentry work. Charges fair. Martha's sharp eyes softened marginally. You did good work today. From what I hear, Hartright's man came by. Said you're to report to the survey team Thursday morning. Clara's hand stilled on her compass. Thursday, but he said, Changed his mind, apparently. Something about your drawings of the water tower. Said they were adequately precise. Martha snorted. High praise from that peacock. Relief flooded through Clara, followed quickly by determination. She'd won the first skirmish, but the war was far from over. Thank you for telling me. Don't thank me yet. You'll be the only woman on that survey team, traveling with 6 men through rough country. Some folks are already talking. Let them talk. Easy to say now. Martha moved to leave, then turned back. That Harper girl was asking after you. Seems you offered to teach her. I did. Her father's a mean drunk when he's in his cups. Won't take kindly to his daughter getting ideas above her station. Then we'll be discreet. Clara met the older woman's gaze steadily. She deserves a chance. Martha studied her for a long moment. You're going to be trouble, aren't you? The quiet kind that sneaks up and rearranges everything while folks aren't looking. I'm just here to draw pictures, Mrs. Quinn. Ha! But there was approval in Martha's expression as she left. Supper's in an hour. Try not to rearrange anything before then. Alone, Clara continued setting up her makeshift studio. Each tool found its place, T-square, triangles, scales, pencils arranged by hardness. She tacked up a large sheet of paper and began sketching the view from her window, letting her hand remember the joy of creation without purpose or judgment. A knock interrupted her. Joe Harper peered around the door, eyes wide with curiosity. Mrs. Quinn said you were back here. Oh. She stepped inside, drawn to the sketches Clara had unpacked. These are beautiful. Is that New York? The Brooklyn Bridge. I helped draft the cable specifications. Clara didn't mention she'd done it at night, after her official work was complete, or that a man had taken credit for her calculations. You helped build a bridge, wonder in the girl's voice. I helped design it. Others did the building. Clara pulled out a stool. Sit, show me what you've been studying. Joe produced a battered primer, pages soft with use. I've been working on geography, but the maps in here are wrong. They show territories that became states years ago. Then we'll draw new ones. Clara spread fresh paper, selected a pencil. The first rule of technical drawing is that accuracy matters more than beauty. But if you can achieve both... They worked until the dinner bell. Joe proving quick to grasp concepts. Her lines were uncertain, but her mind was sharp, eager for knowledge like drought-parched earth for rain. When she left, Clara felt the satisfaction of seeds planted. The next days blurred together in preparation. Clara documented every structure in town, practicing her field techniques. She drew the church from 3 angles, capturing both its architectural bones and its spiritual aspiration. She mapped the business district, noting materials and construction methods. She even sketched the cemetery, thinking of Eli's brother beneath the earth. Wednesday evening found her packing for the survey expedition. Bedroll, canteen, field notebooks, instruments wrapped in oilcloth. She'd bought sturdy boots and a divided riding skirt that scandalized the store clerk. Everything she needed to prove herself in terrain that had killed trained men. You'll want this too. Martha appeared with a canvas satchel. Food that'll keep, jerky, hardtack, dried fruit. Those men won't think to feed you proper. Thank you. Clara was touched by the gesture. I'll pay you back. Already added to your rent. But Martha's gruffness couldn't hide her concern. There's laudanum in there too, case you get hurt, and women's necessities. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. She'd been trying not to think about the practical challenges of being the only woman among rough men for days on end. I've also included a letter, Martha continued, for Sarah McKendrick at the Double Bar Ranch. It's on your route. She'll put you up proper for a night, give you a chance to refresh yourself. Her husband owes me favors. I don't want to be treated differently. You already are, girl. Might as well use it to your advantage when you can. Martha patted her shoulder awkwardly. Now get some sleep. 4 o'clock comes early. But sleep eluded Clara. She lay in her narrow bed, listening to the night sounds of dry, hollow, distant piano music from the saloons, a dog barking, wind rattling windows. Tomorrow would begin the real test, not just of her skills, but of her ability to survive in a world that wanted her to fail. A soft knock broke her reverie. She opened the door to find Joe Harper, shawl wrapped tight against the cold. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Joe thrust a small package at her. "For your trip." Clara unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a leather journal, scarred but solid, and a stub of pencil. "It was my mother's," Joe explained. "She used to write stories before she died. She said someday I'd meet someone who needed it more than memory did." Her voice dropped. "I think she meant you." "Joe, I can't." "Please, it's been sitting in a drawer for 3 years. Words should live, not gather dust." Clara hugged the girl impulsively. "I'll fill it with drawings of everything I see, and when I come back, I'll show you how to translate beauty into lines and angles." After Joe left, Clara sat at her window. New journal open to the first page. By lamplight, she wrote. October 15, 1876. Dry Hollow, Wyoming Territory. Tomorrow I venture into country that has killed better souls than mine. I go armed with instruments of precision and a stubbornness that has been called both virtue and flaw. If these pages are found without me, know that I died trying to prove that vision has no gender. That capability comes in forms society doesn't always recognize. But I don't plan to die. I plan to draw maps that will last generations. I plan to capture the brutal beauty of this land that demands everything and promises nothing. I plan to come back with proof that Clara Ellison belongs wherever she chooses to stand. She closed the journal, packed it carefully with her other tools. Outside, clouds covered the stars, and the wind carried hints of snow. In a few hours, she'd meet the survey team, face whatever tests they'd devised for her. But for now, she had this moment of perfect potential, balanced between her past and future like a compass needle finding true north. Somewhere in the darkness, a horse nickered. She thought of Eli Thatcher, wondered if he was awake too, wrestling with his own ghosts. He'd warned her about Bitter Creek Pass, about the railway's hunger for lives. But he'd also looked at her like she was more than just a problem to be solved or a curiosity to be examined. She shouldn't want that recognition, that steady gray gaze that seemed to see past all her careful defenses. But want it she did, with an intensity that surprised her. Perhaps that was the real danger in this raw country, not the physical threats, but the way it stripped away pretense, leaving only essential truths. Clara rose before her alarm, dressed by lamplight in her practical clothes. She pinned her hair severely, checked her instruments one final time. In the mirror, a stranger looked back harder, leaner, focused as a blade. "I shouldn't want this much," she told her reflection. But the woman in the mirror smiled, fierce and unrepentant. She wanted it all: respect, purpose, belonging, maybe even love if such a thing existed for women who colored outside society's lines. The boarding house was dark as she slipped out, equipment packed and ready. But a lamp glowed in the kitchen, and she found Martha making coffee. "Couldn't let you go without a proper send-off." The older woman poured 2 cups, black as night and strong enough to wake the dead. "My husband was a surveyor. You know, before the cholera took him." Clara accepted the coffee gratefully. "I didn't know." "Died doing what he loved, out measuring the world." Martha stared into her cup. "Used to say the land told stories to those who knew how to listen. Hope you hear good ones out there." They drank in companionable silence until boots on the porch announced the arrival of Clara's escort. She gathered her things, turned to thank Martha again. "Go on," the landlady said gruffly. "Show them what women's hands can build when given the chance." Clara stepped onto the porch to find not Hartright or Donnelly, but Eli Thatcher holding the reins of 2 horses. "Morning," he said simply, Hartright hired me as guide after all. Seems his regular man came down with bottle fever. She knew she should feel wary days in the wilderness with this man who unsettled her carefully ordered world. Instead, she felt a curious lightness, like stepping off a cliff and finding wings. "Then we'd best get started," she said, proud when her voice came steady. "The sun won't wait for anyone, regardless of gender." His smile was slight but real. "No, ma'am, it surely won't." As they rode toward the survey camp, dawn painting the sky in shades of pearl and pink, Clara thought about the journal in her pack, about Joe's mother who wrote stories until death stopped her pen. She thought about Martha's husband, measuring the world until cholera claimed him. She thought about Thomas Thatcher, dead at 23 with all his maps unfinished. So many dreams buried in this hard earth. But Clara Ellison was alive, riding toward mountains that scraped the sky, armed with ambition and exactitude. She'd add her story to this landscape, one precise line at a time. The storage room behind Martha Quinn's kitchen would wait for her return. Shelves empty but ready for the drawings she'd create. It wasn't much a closet-sized space that smelled of soap and memory, but it was hers, earned with skill and stubbornness. And that, Clara thought as the town fell away behind them, was everything. Clara had been back from the survey expedition for 3 days when Eli Thatcher appeared at her studio door. She was deep in transferring field sketches to finished drawings, hair escaping its pins, fingers smudged with graphite. The late afternoon light slanted through the window, illuminating motes of dust and the ghost of exhaustion under her eyes. He didn't knock, just stood in the doorway holding a box of pencils, most broken or worn to nubs. "Found these," he said simply. "Some of the boys from the bunkhouse have been trying to draw, making a mess of it." Clara set down her compass, studied him. He'd cleaned up since the expedition, traded trail dust for a fresh shirt, though his hat still carried the shadow of hard miles. During their 5 days in the field, he'd been professional, distant, speaking only when necessary. Now here he stood in her sanctuary, looking uncertain as she'd ever seen him. "The boys," she asked. "Ranch hands. Couple of them want to learn surveying. Maybe work for the railway." He shifted the box. "Told them that's fool talk, but you brought their pencils here." A ghost of a smile. Seemed like something that needed doing. Clara took the box, examined the contents. Cheap pencils, yes, but held by hands that wanted more than their current lot. She understood that hunger. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the spare stool. "I'll show you how to sharpen them properly." "I know how to sharpen a pencil." "Do you know how to sharpen one for technical drawing? The angle matters. Too sharp and it breaks under pressure. Too dull and your lines lose precision." She selected a pencil, picked up her knife. "Watch." He sat, and suddenly the small room felt smaller. Clara was acutely aware of his presence the way he leaned forward to observe her hands, the scent of leather and soap and something uniquely him. She forced herself to focus on the pencil, shaving wood in careful strokes. "The lead should taper gradually," she explained. "Like this, see?" "May I?" He held out his hand. She passed him the knife and a new pencil. His fingers were steady, movements controlled. He'd told her once he whittled to pass time on long watches. It showed in the way he handled the blade. "Tell me about New York," he said suddenly, not looking up from his work. "What about it?" "Why'd you leave?" Clara selected another pencil. "Buying time. The same reason your ranch hands want to learn surveying. Sometimes where you are isn't where you're meant to be." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have that doesn't involve a lengthy dissertation on the various ways ambitious women inconvenience polite society." She kept her tone light, but he must have heard something beneath because he looked up, gray eyes serious. "You don't inconvenience me." The simplicity of it struck her like a physical blow. No qualifiers, no amendments, just fact. stated as plainly as he might comment on the weather. She cleared her throat. Thank you. They worked in silence after that, creating a small arsenal of properly sharpened pencils. When the box was full, Eli rose to leave. Bring them back, Clara said impulsively. The ranch hands, Tuesday evenings. If they can manage it, I'll teach them basic drafting. You sure people already talk about you teaching the Harper girl? Let them talk. She met his gaze squarely. I've been gossiped about by far more creative minds than Dry Hollow possesses. This time his smile was full, transforming his face. I'll bet you have. Tuesday, then. After he left, Clara sat in the gathering dusk, pencil shavings curling on her desk like questions. She shouldn't have offered to teach rough cowboys. She had enough challenges without adding more, but the thought of hands that knew only ropes and horses learning to capture the world in lines and angles. It felt like planting seeds in untilled ground. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Joe Harper slipped inside, eyes bright with suppressed excitement. Did you see? She burst out. Mr. Thatcher was here. He brought pencils that needed sharpening. Clara began tidying her workspace. Nothing more dramatic than that. Mary at the Mercantile says he never comes to town except for supplies, but he's been here 3 times this week. Joe's grin was sly beyond her years. Wonder what supplies he's finding. Josephine Harper, you have a mind like a penny dreadful novelist. But Clara felt heat climb her neck. Had Eli been in town more often, she'd been too focused on her work to notice. I brought my geography homework, Joe said, mercifully changing the subject. And look, I tried to draw the continental divide like you showed me. They spent the next hour working. Joe's eager questions pushing away thoughts of gray-eyed cowboys. The girl was progressing rapidly, her natural intelligence finally given room to stretch. But, as the lesson ended, Clara noticed Joe gathering her things more slowly than usual. What's troubling you? Joe bit her lip. Father found out about the lessons. He wasn't pleased. Did he hurt you? Clara's voice came sharp. No, nothing like that. He just said I was getting above myself. Said education ruins women for their natural duties. Joe's voice dropped. Said I had to choose between learning and keeping my position at the laundry. Clara felt familiar fury rise. How many bright minds had been dimmed by such ultimatums? What did you tell him? That I'd think about it. Joe looked up, defiance flickering in her eyes. But I already know. I choose learning. I'll find other work if I have to. It may not come to that. Clara moved to her desk, pulled out paper. Let me write to Mrs. McKendrick at the Double Bar Ranch. They might need help. And she struck me as a woman who values capability over convention. You'd do that for me. Women have to help each other. Joe, Lord knows no one else will. After the girl left, Clara worked by lamplight, finishing the railway drawings that would buy her another month's acceptance in Dry Hollow. Each line was perfect, each measurement exact. But her mind kept drifting to broken pencils and steady hands, to the way Eli had said she didn't inconvenience him like it was the simplest truth in the world. The next evening brought unexpected visitors. Clara was cleaning brushes when Martha appeared with 2 women she recognized from church misses, Garrett, the banker's wife, and Mrs. Paulson, who ran the dress shop. Ladies, Clara said carefully. These were the town's social arbiters, the ones who decided which women were respectable and which were not. Miss Ellison, Mrs. Garrett's smile was thin as paper. We've come about a proposition. Clara waited, knowing nothing good ever followed that tone. The church needs new windows. Mrs. Paulson said, Reverend Morrison suggested you might design them, something uplifting but appropriate. I'd be honored. There would be conditions. Mrs. Garrett interrupted. You'd work under the church building committee's supervision. All designs would need approval. And of course, there's the matter of your other activities. My other activities. Teaching those rough men, it's unseemly. What kind of message does it send? Clara felt her spine straighten. It sends the message that anyone who wants to better themselves deserves the chance. Men like that don't better themselves. They just learn enough to cause trouble. Mrs. Garrett's eyes narrowed. We're offering you a chance at respectability, Miss Ellison. Design our windows. Cease these inappropriate lessons, and you might find doors opening instead of closing. And if I refuse, Mrs. Paulson sighed. Then I'm afraid I couldn't in good conscience sell you fabric, and Mrs. Garrett's husband might find your railway contract problematic. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Clara understood perfectly conform or be squeezed out. It was the same choice she'd faced in New York, dressed in frontier clothing. I'll think about it, she said finally. Good evening, ladies. After they left, Martha lingered. They mean it, you know. They've run out women before. Were you sent to add weight to their threat? I was sent to see if you had the sense God gave a goose. Martha studied her. But I can see you don't, so I'll say this instead. The Double Bar Ranch buys more supplies than any 3 businesses in town. Sarah McKendrick's word carries weight. Might want to cultivate that friendship. Alone again. Clara slumped at her desk. She'd fled New York to escape such games, but apparently, small minds thought alike regardless of geography. She pulled out Joe's mother's journal, read her own words from that first night. Asterisk, I plan to come back with proof that Clara Ellison belongs wherever she chooses to stand. Easier written than done, she muttered. A sound made her look up. Eli stood in the doorway again, this time holding a steaming cup. Saw your light, thought you might need coffee. I need a miracle, or possibly a new town, but she accepted the cup gratefully. How long were you listening? Long enough. He entered uninvited, sat on the stool like he belonged there. They given you trouble about the teaching, among other things. The coffee was strong, bitter, perfect. Apparently, I'm a corrupting influence. Good. At her startled look, he elaborated. This town could use some corrupting. Gets so caught up in what's proper, forgets what's right. Speaking from experience. His jaw tightened. My brother wanted to be an engineer. Town said cowboys should stay cowboys. He took that railway job partly to spite them, partly to prove them wrong. A pause. Died before he could do either. Clara set down the cup, chose her words carefully. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to stop teaching because... Not asking you to. He met her gaze. Just saying be careful. Town's got ways of breaking people who color outside the lines. And yet you brought me those pencils. Yeah, well, he stood, suddenly seeming to fill the small space. Maybe I think some lines need redrawing. He moved toward the door, then turned back. Tuesday still good for the boys? Yes. I'll be here too, to keep things proper. His smile was dry. Wouldn't want anyone saying you were alone with rough men. After he left, Clara sat in the lamplight, surrounded by her precise drawings and sharpened pencils. She thought about choices, the ones that had brought her here, the ones that faced her now. She could design church windows, become respectable, find her place in Dry Hollow's narrow structure. Or she could keep teaching anyone who wanted to learn, keep pushing boundaries, keep being too much for small minds to contain. She picked up a pencil, one Eli had sharpened, and began to sketch, not railway bridges or church windows, but the view from her window, the vast sky, the distant mountains, the endless possibility of horizons that didn't care about propriety. I shouldn't want this much, she said to the empty room, but want it she did all of it. The work, the teaching, the respect she'd earn one perfect drawing at a time. And maybe, just maybe, the steady presence of a man who brought coffee and understanding in equal measure. Tuesday would come soon enough. Let the town talk. She had pencils to sharpen and minds to expand. One careful line at a time. The first snow came early that year. falling like ash from a gray wool sky. Clara had been in Dry Hollow for 6 weeks, long enough to establish routines, make enemies, and learn that Wyoming cold was a living thing that crept through walls and settled in your bones. She'd spent the morning working on railway specifications, fingers stiff despite the small stove Martha had grudgingly allowed in the studio. The drawings were due tomorrow, and Hartright had made it clear that any delay would confirm his suspicions about female reliability. By afternoon, the snow had thickened, transforming the world outside her window into a blur of white. Clara pulled her shawl tighter and continued working, but her hands trembled not from cold alone, but from the exhaustion of maintaining perfection while fighting on multiple fronts. The teaching had expanded beyond her intentions. Every Tuesday, 3 ranch hands came for drafting lessons, Eli sitting quietly in the corner like a watchful guardian. Thursdays belonged to Joe Harper, who devoured knowledge like a starving creature. Saturdays, 2 more young women had started joining the minister's daughter and a girl from the Chinese laundry, both hungry for something beyond Dry Hollow's narrow expectations. But expansion brought scrutiny. Mrs. Garrett had made good on her threats. The dress shop wouldn't sell to Clara, forcing her to order fabric by mail. The general store served her with cold efficiency. Even the church, which she'd attended faithfully, had grown chilly as the weather. A knock interrupted her brooding. She expected Joe, who sometimes came early, but found Eli standing in the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders like sugar. "You're late," she said, then realized her mistake. "It's Wednesday." "It is." He stepped inside without invitation. She noticed he did that now, claimed space in her studio like he belonged there. "Came to check your firewood situation." "I'm fine." He looked at her single log beside the stove, then at her, one eyebrow raised. "I'm conserving," she amended. "Wood is expensive. Wood is necessary. You can't draw if your fingers freeze off." He moved past her, studying her work. "These are good." "They're adequate." She rubbed her hands together, trying to restore circulation. "Hartright wants them perfect. Hartright wants them done by a man so he can stop explaining you to his bosses." Eli turned from the drawings to her. "When's the last time you ate?" Clara tried to remember. "This morning, I think." "You think?" He shook his head, shrugged out of his coat. "Put this on." "I don't need—" Clara. Just her name. But the way he said it stopped her protest. "Put the coat on. We're getting supper. Then I'm bringing you proper firewood." "I can't afford—" "Did I ask you to pay for it?" He held out the coat. "I've got more wood than I can burn and beef than I can eat. Call it neighborly charity if it makes you feel better." She took the coat because arguing required energy she didn't have. It smelled of him, and the warmth was immediate. Seductive. People will talk if we're seen together, more than they already do. Let them talk. They've been saying I killed my brother for insurance money. Your reputation can't sink mine any lower. The casual way he said it made her stomach clench. "Eli, come on, before the storm gets worse." She saved her work, banked the dying fire, and followed him into the white world outside. The snow fell thick and silent, muffling sounds until Dry Hollow felt like a different place entirely. Eli kept a hand on her elbow, steady but not possessive, guiding her through drifts that were already knee-deep. The hotel restaurant glowed with lamplight and warmth. A few patrons looked up when they entered, conversations stuttering to a halt. Clara straightened her spine, met their stares with the same cool composure that had carried her through New York ballrooms. "Table for 2, Eli told the proprietor, Mr. Chen, whose restaurant served both American and Chinese food to anyone who could pay. They were seated in a corner, far from other diners. Clara wondered if that was kindness or quarantine. "The beef stew's good," Eli said, not looking at the menu. "And the tea's hot. You come here often?" "When I'm in town." He studied her across the table. "You're shaking." She was Fine tremors ran through her hands. Her shoulders. I'm just cold. You're exhausted, and probably half-starved from forgetting to eat. His gray eyes held something she couldn't name. When you going to stop trying to prove you're invincible? When people stop testing the theory. Mister. Chen brought tea without being asked, the pot steaming like a small dragon. Clara wrapped her hands around the cup, let the heat seep through her. Joe told me her father relented. Eli said, about the lessons. Mrs. McKendrick offered her part-time work at the ranch. Turns out she values educated help. Clara managed a smile. One small victory. And the church windows. Still undecided, I submitted a design, but apparently it was too modern. I suspect they mean too assertive. My angels had the audacity to look strong rather than simpering. Heaven forbid. The stew arrived, thick with meat and vegetables, accompanied by bread that steamed when broken. Clara ate slowly at first, then with increasing appetite as her body remembered hunger. There's talk of a town meeting, Eli said carefully, about the foreign influences affecting local youth. Foreign influences, meaning me, among others, the Chinese families, the Mexican traders, anyone who doesn't fit their narrow definition of American. He paused. Might be wise to make yourself scarce for a bit. Run away. That's your advice. Strategic retreat, just until they find a new target for their righteousness. Clara set down her spoon. I ran from New York. I won't run from Dry Hollow. This is where I make my stand. Even if it costs you everything. Especially then. She met his gaze. Your brother didn't run. Neither will I. Something flickered across his face. Pain, pride, fear, all mixed together. Tom was trying to prove something. Got him killed. Maybe. Or maybe he was just trying to live as himself instead of who others expected him to be. She reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. That's not wrong. Eli, it's necessary. He turned his hand palm up, fingers closing around hers. His skin was calloused, warm, alive. They sat like that, connected across the small table while snow fell outside and the good people of Dry Hollow plotted their exclusions. I need to tell you something, he said finally. About Tom. About why they think I killed him. You don't owe me explanations. Maybe not, but I want you to know. He didn't release her hand. Tom was supposed to survey a different section that day. Safer ground, but I'd been drinking the night before, fighting with him about the railway job. Said things, harsh things, so he took the dangerous route to prove me wrong. Clara squeezed his fingers. That was his choice. Made because of my words. His voice was steady, but she heard the fault lines beneath. The insurance money came to me because I was his only family. $20,000. Blood money. Some call it. What do you call it? Sitting in a bank in Denver. Haven't touched a cent. He finally looked at her. Can't decide if spending it honors him or betrays him. What would Tom want? A ghost of a smile. He'd want me to use it for something that mattered. Something that changed things. Then that's your answer. They finished eating in companionable silence. Eli paid despite her protests, then led her back through the storm. At her studio, he stopped her from entering. Wait here. He returned with an armload of split wood, then another and another. Soon a respectable pile stood beside her stove. Then came a basket bread, dried fruit, jerky, even precious oranges. Eli, this is too much. It's neighborly. He built up her fire until the studio glowed with warmth. That should hold you through the storm. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for the gift of warmth, food, understanding. He moved to leave, then turned back. That town meeting's Friday night. They can't do much besides talk, but talk can hurt when enough people believe it. Will you be there? Wouldn't miss it. His smile was sharp as winter wind. Someone needs to remind them that this country was built by people who didn't fit in where they came from. After he left, Clara sat by the crackling fire, wrapped in warmth that went deeper than wood heat. She thought about Tom Thatcher, taking the dangerous route to prove a point, about Eli, carrying guilt like stones in his chest, about herself, building a life one precise line at a time in a place that didn't want her kind of precision. She moved to her desk, pulled out Joe's mother's journal. By firelight, she wrote, * November 3, 1876, ***. The cold here is different from New York's. There it was an inconvenience. Here it's an adversary. But I'm learning to fight it, with help from unexpected sources. *E brought wood and food today. More than that, he brought understanding. We're all carrying our dead here dreams, people, versions of ourselves we couldn't save. Maybe that's what makes Dry Hollow so harsh. Too many ghosts. Not enough room for the living. There's to be a town meeting about my corrupting influence. I should be frightened. Instead, I'm angry, good. Anger burns hotter than fear, and I need all the heat I can get. *. Tomorrow I finish the railway drawings. Next week, I teach anyone brave enough to come. And Friday, I face whatever judgment Dry Hollow thinks it has the right to pass. *. I shouldn't want this much respect. Purpose, the steady warmth of a man who brings wood without being asked. But I do. God help me, I do. She closed the journal, returned to her drawings. The lines came easier now, her hands warm and steady. Outside, the storm raged, but inside her small studio, she had fire, food, and the knowledge that she wasn't fighting alone. Stay warm, Eli had said, but what she heard was, stay, just stay. And despite everything, the cold, the censure, the constant battle for basic dignity, she intended to do just that. The town meeting was held in the church, which Clara found deeply ironic. Nothing like discussing the expulsion of undesirables beneath a cross that preached universal love. She arrived early, choosing a seat near the back where she could observe the gathering storm of righteousness. Joe Harper sat beside her, chin raised despite the disapproving glances. The girl had insisted on coming, declaring that if they were going to condemn her teacher, they'd have to look her in the eye while doing it. You don't have to be here, Clara murmured as more townspeople filed in. Yes, I do. Joe's voice was steady. You taught me that standing up matters, even when your knees shake. The church filled quickly. Clara recognized most faces merchants who'd grown cold, women who'd crossed streets to avoid her, men who saw her as either threat or curiosity. Mrs. Garrett sat in the front row like a queen holding court, her husband beside her looking uncomfortable. Hartright was there too, studying his pocket watch as if timing righteousness. Then Eli entered, and the atmosphere shifted. He didn't hurry, didn't skulk, just walked down the center aisle in his work clothes and sat directly across from Clara, where everyone could see. The message was clear as a bell on Sunday morning. Reverend Morrison called the meeting to order with obvious reluctance. He was a good man caught between conscience and congregation, and it showed in the deep lines around his eyes. We're here to discuss concerns about influences in our community, he began. Mrs. Garrett, you called this meeting. Perhaps you'd like to speak first. She rose like a monument to propriety, black bombazine rustling. Thank you, Reverend. We all know why we're here. Our town is under assault. Foreign ideas, inappropriate behaviors, the corruption of our youth. Name names. Constance. Someone called out. Don't hide behind fancy words. Mrs. Garrett's mouth thinned. Very well. Clara Ellison has been teaching men and women together, teaching them skills beyond their station, filling their heads with dreams that can only lead to disappointment and discord. She's teaching them to read maps and draw straight lines, Eli said, not raising his voice but filling the space anyway. Last I checked, those weren't revolutionary acts. You would defend her, Eli Thatcher. Mrs. Garrett's tone dripped acid. Birds of a feather, as they say. Both of you thinking you're above the natural order. The natural order? Joe stood suddenly, trembling but determined. You mean the order where I wash your petticoats for pennies while my mind rots from disuse? Josephine Harper, you will sit down. No. Joe's voice cracked but didn't break. Miss Clara taught me geography, mathematics, how to think, not just accept. If that's corruption, then corrupt me more. A murmur ran through the crowd. Clara saw faces she hadn't expected: the German baker, the blacksmith's wife, others who lived on Dry Hollow's margins. The girl makes a point, said the blacksmith. Magnus Olsson, his Swedish accent thick. My boy Jonas, he learns from Miss Ellison. Now he can calculate measurements, help with the business. This is bad. It's inappropriate, Mrs. Garrett insisted. Men and women together, unchaperoned. I'm there every lesson. Eli interrupted. Unless you're questioning my honor too. Your honor? Donnelly spoke for the first time. Voice snake mean. Rich talk from a man who profited from his brother's death. The church went silent. Clara saw Eli's hands clench, saw the muscle jump in his jaw. Before she could think better of it, she stood. How dare you? Her voice carried the authority of every architectural firm that had tried to break her. Eli Thatcher has shown more honor in his grief than you've shown in your petty suspicions. He sits with those lessons not for propriety, but because he believes in lifting others up. When did that become a sin in Wyoming? Miss Ellison, Reverend Morrison said gently. Perhaps you'd like to speak to the accusations directly. Accusations. Clara moved to the aisle, where everyone could see her. Yes, I teach anyone who wants to learn. Yes, I believe ability has no gender. Yes, I came here running from a world that wanted me smaller, quieter, less. But I didn't run to hide. I ran to build. She pulled papers from her satchel, copies of her railway drawings. These specifications will help bring prosperity to Dry Hollow. The young men I teach will become surveyors, engineers, builders of the future. The women will run businesses, teach children, contribute more than silent service. Pretty words. Mrs. Garrett sneered. But we know what you really are. A disruptive influence. A woman who refuses her place. My place, Clara laughed, sharp and sudden. My place is wherever I choose to stand, and I choose to stand here, in Dry Hollow, teaching anyone brave enough to learn. Then you leave us no choice. Mr. Garrett said, finally speaking. The bank will call in any debts. The railway will be informed of your unsuitability. You'll find Dry Hollow a cold place for those who won't conform. Colder than it already is. Clara gestured at the window, where snow still fell. I've survived worse winters than your disapproval. Have you survived watching your students suffer for your principles? Mrs. Garrett's smile was cruel. The Harper girl works for my friends. The ranch hands need their jobs. Even Mr. Thatcher has cattle to sell. How many will you drag down with your stubbornness? There it was, the real threat. Not to her, but to those who'd trusted her. Clara felt the weight of it, heavier than any Wyoming snow. That's enough. Sarah McKendrick stood in the church doorway, ranch coat dusted with snow, presence commanding as any general. Behind her stood her husband Robert and several double-bar cowboys. Sarah, Mrs. Garrett's voice wavered. This doesn't concern you. Everything in this town concerns me. Sarah strode forward, boot heels ringing. Especially when small minds threaten progress. Miss Ellison designed improvements for our water system, saved us thousands. Any bank that calls in her debts will lose double-bar business. Any merchant who refuses her custom will find our trade elsewhere. You'd choose her over your own kind, Garrett sputtered. My own kind, Sarah laughed. I came here from Boston, same as you. Constance. Difference is, I learn to judge people by what they build, not what they break. The railway, Hartwright began. The railway needs those drawings." Robert McKendrick interrupted. "They know it. You know it. Miss Ellison's work is the best they've seen. They won't sacrifice profit for your provincial prejudices." The tide was turning. Clara could feel it in the shifting of bodies, the uncertain glances, but misses. Garrett had one more card to play. And what of propriety? What of the example she sets? Living alone, entertaining men.
"I live in a boarding house with 6 other residents,"
Clara said evenly.
"I work in a converted closet. If that's entertainment, it's the dullest show in Wyoming."
Unexpected laughter from the back. Chen stood with his wife, both dressed in their best clothes. "Miss Clara teaches my daughter English, teaches her pride. In China, we honor teachers. Here, you attack them." More voices now. A chorus of support Clara hadn't expected. The minister's daughter admitting she'd been learning. The baker's wife confessing she'd asked Clara about business accounting. Even some ranch hands. Shuffling, embarrassed but firm in their defense. Eli never spoke again, but his presence was a constant, solid, unwavering. There, when Clara caught his eye, he nodded slightly. Not approval, exactly, but recognition. She was fighting her battle her way, with words and wit rather than fists. Finally, Reverend Morrison raised his hand for silence. "I think we've heard enough. This meeting was called to address concerns about Miss Ellison's influence. What I've heard tonight is that her influence extends far beyond what any of us realized, and mostly for good."
"Reverend Mrs."
Garrett protested.
"Constance, please."
He looked tired but resolute. Christ himself taught fishermen and tax collectors. He dined with outcasts and lifted up the lowly. If Miss Ellison's crime is education, then we should all be so criminal. The meeting dissolved into arguments. Clusters of heated discussion. Clara found herself surrounded by her students, all talking at once, protective and proud. But she excused herself, needing air, needing space. Outside, the snow had stopped. Stars pricked through the cleared sky, sharp as the temperature. She breathed deep, tasting winter and wood smoke and something like victory. That was well done. She didn't startle anymore when Eli appeared beside her. It was becoming a habit, his quiet arrivals. Was it Mrs.? Garrett won't forget this. Neither will the others. The ones who spoke for you. He stood close enough that she felt his warmth. You've got allies now. Real ones. And enemies. Had those already. At least now you know where you stand. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Dry Hollow go about its evening routines. Saloon lights spilled onto snow. Laughter drifted from somewhere. Life continued despite the attempt to narrow it.
"Thank you,"
Clara said finally.
"for being there, for not trying to fight my battles."
You didn't need me to. You've got words sharper than any fist. He paused. But I'm glad I was there. In case I needed someone to drag me out bodily when I started speechifying. In case you needed reminding that you're not alone. He turned to face her fully. Tom used to say the hardest part wasn't the work or the danger. It was the isolation, being the only one who saw things different. He wasn't the only one. He had you.
"Not enough. I was too busy being scared for him to be proud."
His breath clouded in the cold air. Won't make that mistake again. The weight of the words settled between them. Clara felt something shift, tectonic and irreversible.
"I should check on Joe,"
she said, not moving. You should. He didn't move either. They stood there, two people who'd been broken by different worlds, finding something whole in the space between them. Finally, Clara stepped back. "Good night, Eli." "Good night, teacher." The title from him felt like a gift. She carried it back into the church, where Joe waited with shining eyes and Sarah McKendrick held court among the converted. The war wasn't won, might never be truly won, but tonight's battle was hers. Later, alone in her studio with her fire burning bright, Clara opened the journal and wrote, *November 10, 1876, asterisk, asterisk. I shouldn't want this much respect earned in public. Allies gained through courage, the steady presence of a man learning not to let fear stop love. But I do. I want it with the same hunger that brought me west, the same stubborn hope that makes me teach anyone willing to learn. Asterisk. Tonight Dry Hollow showed its teeth and its heart. Both are real. Both matter. I'll navigate between them, one careful step at a time, until this place stops trying to make me smaller and starts seeing me whole. Asterisk. Tomorrow I teach, despite threats, because of support, in defiance and hope combined. It's what I came here to do. It's what I'll keep doing until the mountains fall, or I do. Asterisk E said, I'm not alone. For the first time since leaving New York. I believe it. She set down the pen, banked the fire, prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, misses. Garrett's revenge, Donnelly's spite. The 1,000 small cuts of living too large in a small place. But tonight, she'd stood her ground and found others standing with her. In a frontier town where the cold could kill and conformity could suffocate. That felt like everything. The whispers started 3 days after the town meeting. Clara noticed them first at the general store conversations that died when she entered. Eyes that tracked her movements with calculating interest. But these weren't the hostile stares she'd grown accustomed to. These held something worse, pity. Martha finally told her, cornering Clara in the boarding house kitchen on a gray Thursday morning. People are saying things, the older woman began, uncharacteristically gentle, about you and Eli Thatcher. Clara continued measuring coffee, keeping her hands steady. People have been saying things since I arrived. This is different. Martha glanced at the door, lowered her voice. They're saying you're pursuing him. For his money. The insurance money from his brother. The measuring spoon clattered against the pot. What? Constance Garrett's been making rounds, having tea with all the proper ladies, suggesting that a woman of your ambition might see Eli as a convenient solution to financial pressures. Clara sank into a chair, the weight of this new attack hitting her. They'd failed to drive her out with direct confrontation, so now they aimed for her reputation and Eli's. She's telling people I'm a fortune hunter, among other things. Martha's face was grim. Says it explains why he defends you so fierce, that you've got your hooks in him proper. That's vile. That's Constance Garrett when she's crossed. Martha poured 2 cups of coffee, pushed one toward Clara. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Before Clara could answer, boots thundered on the porch. Joe Harper burst in, face flushed with cold and anger. Miss Clara, you need to come to town, now. What's happened? There's been a fight. At the saloon. Mr. Thatcher, Joe caught her breath. He defended your honor, forcefully. Clara was already reaching for her coat. Is he hurt? Not as bad as the other fellows, but Marshall Dixon's involved now, and Clara didn't wait to hear more. She ran through the streets, skirts hiked up, propriety abandoned. A crowd had gathered outside the brass bell, their excited chatter dying as she approached. She pushed through to find Eli sitting on the wooden sidewalk, holding a bloody cloth to his nose. His knuckles were split, shirt torn. Nearby, Donnelly and 2 other men looked considerably worse. What happened? She knelt beside Eli, checking his injuries with gentle fingers. Nothing worth fussing over. His voice came thick through the blood. Like hell, said Magnus Olson, the blacksmith. Donnelly was running his mouth about you. Miss Clara said things no man should say about a lady. Eli here took exception. Violently. Marshall Dixon added dryly. He was a fair man, but tired of breaking up fights. Going to need statements from everyone. I'll give you a statement, Eli said, getting to his feet with Clara's help. Donnelly suggested Miss Ellison was selling herself for my brother's money. I corrected his misunderstanding. Heat flooded Clara's face, anger, mortification, and something else at Eli's matter-of-fact defense. "That true, Donnelly?" Dixon asked. Donnelly spat blood, glared. "Just repeating what everyone's thinking. Woman like that, cozying up to a man with money." Eli started forward, but Clara caught his arm. "Don't, he's not worth it." "Listen to your woman, Thatcher," Donnelly sneered. "She's got you trained already." "Enough." Dixon stepped between them. "Donnelly, you and your boys clear out. Eli, come by the office later for that statement, and maybe everyone could remember we're supposed to be civilized folk." The crowd began to disperse, but Clara heard the whispers following like smoke. She kept her hand on Eli's arm, guiding him away from the scene. "My studio's closer," she said when he started toward the hotel. "Let me clean those cuts." He didn't argue, which worried her more than the blood. In her small sanctuary, she sat him on the stool and fetched water and clean cloths. He watched her work in silence, gray eyes unreadable. "I'm sorry," she said finally, dabbing at a cut above his eye. "You shouldn't have—" "Stop." He caught her wrist gently. "Don't apologize for other people's poison." "But if you hadn't what existed done your job taught people who wanted to learn." His thumb brushed her pulse point. "You've done nothing wrong, Clara." "I've disrupted your life, made you a target." "My life needed disrupting." He released her wrist, but she didn't pull away. "Been sleepwalking since Tom died. You woke me up." She resumed cleaning his wounds, trying to ignore the intimacy of the act, the warmth of his skin, the way he sat still for her ministrations, the trust implicit in letting her tend to him. "This is what they wanted," she said quietly. "To isolate us, make us liabilities to each other. They're too late for that." The certainty in his voice made her hands still. "Eli, I know what people are saying, about you wanting Tom's money, about me being fool enough to fall for it." He met her gaze steadily. "Let them talk. We know the truth." "Do we?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "What is the truth between us?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, carefully, as if the words were fragile, "The truth is, you came here carrying hurt like luggage. The truth is, I've been froze solid since my brother died. The truth is, somewhere between your teaching and my watching, we started thawing each other out." Clara's throat tightened. "That's not an answer to what they're saying." "Isn't it?" He stood, moved closer. "They say you want my money. I say take it. All of it. Build a proper school. Teach everyone who's hungry to learn. Make Tom's death mean something." "Eli, you can't." "They say I'm defending you for improper reasons." His voice dropped. "Maybe they're right about that part. Maybe my reasons aren't entirely noble. Maybe I watch you teach and think about futures I got no right to imagine." The air between them crackled like fire. Clara knew she should step back, restore proper distance instead. She reached up, touched the bruise forming on his jaw. "You foolish, noble man," she whispered, "fighting battles with your fists that can't be won that way. How else should I fight them?" "The same way I do, by living, by refusing to be smaller than we are." She dropped her hand, stepped back. "But we have to be careful now. They'll twist anything into proof of their suspicions." "You want me to stay away?" The thought hurt like winter wind. I want many things I shouldn't, but what I need is to keep teaching without putting my students at risk, including you." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, we'll be careful. Public proper. But Clara," he moved to the door, turned back. "I'm not ashamed of defending you, not ashamed of whatever this is between us. When you're ready to stop being careful, you let me know." After he left, Clara slumped at her desk. The violence of the morning's events churned in her stomach. She'd faced opposition before, but it had been cold, institutional. This was personal, visceral, aimed at the tender places where connection grew. A soft knock interrupted her brooding. Sarah McKendrick entered without waiting for permission. Ranch pragmatism in every line. Heard there was trouble.
Mrs. Garrett's escalating her campaign.
Constance always did fight dirty when cornered. Sarah studied Clara with knowing eyes. Also heard Eli Thatcher broke Donnelly's nose defending you.
He shouldn't have.
Course he should have. Man talks that way about a lady. He gets what's coming. Sarah's smile was sharp. Question is, what are you going to do about it? What can I do? Anything I say will be twisted. Any action interpreted as proof of their accusations.
So you let them control the narrative?
Sarah shook her head. I expected more spine from you. Clara Ellison. Anger flared. I have plenty of spine, but I also have students to protect, work to complete. And a man who just bled for your honor. Don't forget that part. Sarah's expression softened. Look, I know Constance Garrett's type. She can't bear being shown up, especially by another woman. This campaign of hers, it's desperation dressed as morality. Desperate people do desperate things.
They do, which is why you need to get ahead of this.
Sarah pulled out an envelope.
There's a barn dance at the Double Bar next Saturday.
Respectable gathering. Families welcome. You'll come. Bring that Harper girl and any other students who want. Show the town you're not hiding.
A dance.
Clara almost laughed. I'm fighting for my professional life, and you want me to dance. I want you to be seen, happy, successful, surrounded by people whose lives you've improved. Sarah's eyes glinted. And if Eli Thatcher happens to dance with you properly, with half the county watching well, hard to paint that as scandalous. Clara took the invitation, understanding the strategy even as she dreaded it. You're asking me to perform respectability. I'm asking you to fight smart. Constance wants to paint you as a dangerous outsider. Show them you're part of this community's future. Sarah moved to leave, then paused. Wear something that makes them remember you're not just a teacher. You're a woman who chose to be here, chose to build something. Make them see it. Alone again. Clara moved to her window. Main Street looked normal, people going about their business, life continuing despite the morning's violence. But she saw the undercurrents now, the careful distances, the choosing of sides. She thought about Eli's split knuckles, the blood on his shirt. He'd fought for her with the tools he knew, even though violence solved nothing. Now she had to fight with her tools: intelligence, dignity, refusal to be diminished. Her eyes fell on the journal. Still open from the night before. She picked up her pen, wrote quickly. November 16, 1876 *. They're calling me a fortune hunter now, as if a woman's ambition must always have mercenary roots, as if connection between two people must be calculated rather than whatever this is. *E offered me the money today, all of it. Build a school. He said, make his brother's death mean something. The generosity of it broke my heart. The trust of it terrified me. Sarah McKendrick wants me to dance, to perform respectability so thoroughly they can't deny it. Part of me wants to refuse, to stand on principle. But principle doesn't protect my students. Principle doesn't heal split knuckles or restore reputations. So I'll dance, I'll smile. I'll be so perfectly proper they'll choke on their own suspicions. And if they still come for me after that, at least I'll know I tried their way first. I shouldn't want this much his defense, his trust, his presence that makes my small studio feel complete. But wanting seems to be what I do best, proper or not. She closed the journal, began preparing for her afternoon lesson. Her students would have heard about the fight by now. They'd need reassurance, steady presence, proof that learning continued despite the chaos. At her desk, she found a note that hadn't been there before. Eli's handwriting, quick and stark. Don't let them make you smaller, not for anyone, not even for me. Clara pressed the note to her chest, felt something fierce and protective rise within her. They wanted to paint her as a fortune hunter. Let them. She'd show them what she was really hunting: a future where Joe Harper could be an engineer, where ranch hands could become surveyors, where a woman could teach without defending her every breath. And if that future included a gray-eyed cowboy who fought with his fists when his heart was involved, well, that was a complication she'd navigate when the time came. For now, she had students to teach and a reputation to salvage. The dancing would come later. The fire started in the early hours of November 22nd, when most of Dry Hollow slept under a blanket of fresh snow. Clara woke to the sound of bells, not church bells, but the frantic clanging that meant disaster. She stumbled to her window, saw the orange glow against the night sky. The stable, Eli's stable at the edge of town, where he kept horses for the Double Bar Ranch when they needed tending. Without thinking, she pulled on her boots and coat over her nightdress, ran into the street. Others were running too, men with buckets, women with blankets. The volunteer fire brigade was already forming a line from the water pump. But Clara could see it was too late. The flames had taken hold, eating through dry timber like a living thing, and somewhere in that inferno, she heard horses screaming. "Where's Eli?" She grabbed Magnus Olson's arm.
Has anyone seen Eli?
"He went in," the blacksmith said grimly, "trying to get the horses out." Clara's heart stopped, without conscious thought. She started toward the stable, but strong hands held her back. "You can't." Martha Quinn appeared beside her, face lit by flames.
You'll only make it worse.
"He's in there. And he knows what he's doing. Wait." The waiting was agony. Clara stood with the crowd, useless, watching flames devour wood and hay and possibly know she wouldn't think it. Then, through the smoke, movement. A figure emerged, leading a terrified mare. Then another horse, and another. Eli, face black with soot, clothes singed, but alive. Gloriously, blessedly alive. He went back in.
No,
Clara breathed, but he was already gone, swallowed by smoke and flame. The roof beam cracked, a sound like thunder. Part of the structure sagged. The fire chief was shouting for everyone to get back. The building was coming down. Eli burst through what had been a wall, half carrying, half dragging a young ranch hand Clara recognized as Pete Williams. They cleared the building just as the roof collapsed in a shower of sparks and burning timber. Clara was moving before anyone could stop her. She reached them as Eli lowered Pete to the ground. The boy was coughing but conscious, clutching a bundle to his chest, a barn cat and her kittens, saved from the flames. "You damn fool," Clara said, her voice breaking. "You beautiful, reckless, damn fool." Eli looked up at her, gray eyes reflecting the fire. Tom would have. He started coughing, doubled over. "Get him to Doc Morrison's," someone shouted. "Boy, too." Clara helped support Eli as they moved away from the fire. His weight against her felt solid, real, alive. She didn't care who saw, didn't care what they'd say. He was breathing. Everything else could be sorted later. Doc Morrison's surgery was organized chaos. Pete was settled on one cot, Eli on another. Clara refused to leave, made herself useful fetching water and bandages while the doctor worked. Smoke inhalation mostly. Doc Morrison pronounced after examination. "Some minor burns. They'll both be fine with rest." "Thank God," Clara breathed. "Thank Eli Thatcher," Pete croaked from his cot. "I went in to save Buttercup here," he indicated the cat, "and a beam fell, couldn't get out. Mr. Thatcher came for me." "Course I did," Eli said hoarsely. "Don't make it more than it was." But Clara saw the way Pete looked at him. Hero worship plain on his smoke-stained face. Saw, too, how others were looking townspeople who'd whispered about insurance money and dead brothers now seeing a man who'd risk everything for a ranch hand and his cat. Dawn was breaking by the time the fire was controlled. The stable was gone, but the flames hadn't spread. 7 horses saved out of 10. It could have been so much worse. Clara stayed while Eli slept, the doctor's laudanum easing his breathing. She dozed in a chair beside his cot, waking when he stirred. "You're still here," he said, voice rough. "Where else would I be?" "Home, preserving your reputation." "My reputation can go hang." She poured him water, helped him sit up to drink. "Why did you go back after the horses were out?" "Heard Pete calling. Couldn't leave him." He studied her over the cup. "You've been crying." She had been. She realized. Tears of relief, of delayed terror, of something deeper she couldn't name. "I thought—" She couldn't finish. "I'm harder to kill than that." But his attempt at lightness fell flat. "Clara, the fire. It wasn't an accident." Ice formed in her stomach. "What?" "Smelled kerosene when I went in. Saw poor patterns on the floor." His jaw tightened. "Someone said it." "But who would?" She stopped, knowing. Mrs. Garrett. "She's mean but not criminal. But Donnelly's been missing since our fight. His friends, too." Eli caught her hand. "This might not be over." Marshal Dixon arrived then, having heard Eli was awake. Clara listened as Eli reported his suspicions, watched Dixon's face grow grave. "I'll look into it," the marshal promised. "Meanwhile, might be wise for both of you to take precautions." After he left, Clara felt the weight of it all crash down. The campaign against her had escalated to arson, to attempted murder. Her presence had brought this danger. "Don't," Eli said sharply. "Don't what?" "Don't start blaming yourself. I can see it in your face." He squeezed her hand. "This is on whoever lit that match, not you. If I hadn't come here, then I'd still be sleepwalking through life, and Pete would be dead." His voice gentled. "Clara, you didn't bring trouble to Dry Hollow. You revealed trouble that was already here." Sarah McKendrick burst through the door then, still in her nightrobe and boots. "Eli Thatcher, you magnificent idiot! How dare you scare us like that?" "Morning to you, too, Sarah." She turned to Clara. "And you, sitting vigil like a worried wife. Half the town saw you run to him." But her tone held approval rather than censure. "I don't care what they saw." "Good, because they also saw him risk his life for one of their own. Hard to paint a man as villain when he's pulling boys from burning buildings." Sarah's smile was fierce. "Constance Garrett's campaign just went up in smoke, you might say." Over the next hours, a stream of visitors came. Ranch hands, townspeople, even some who'd been cold to Clara before. They brought food, offers of help rebuilding, quiet acknowledgments of respect. Pete's mother wept over Eli's hand, blessing him for saving her boy. Joe Harper arrived with Clara's clothes and a report from town. "Everyone's talking about it, about how Mr. Thatcher went in 3 times, saved Pete and all those horses, about how you ran to help in your night clothes." Her eyes sparkled. "Mrs. Garrett's nowhere to be seen." By afternoon, Eli was released with strict instructions to rest. Clara walked him to the boarding house, where Martha had prepared a room. "You can't go back to the ranch yet," Clara said firmly. "Doctor's orders." "Since when do you give my orders?" "Since you decided to run into burning buildings." She helped him up the stairs, settled him in the small but clean room. "Rest. I'll bring supper later." He caught her hand as she turned to go. "Clara, the dance at the Double Bar, it's in 3 days." "You can't seriously be thinking about dancing." "I'm thinking about not letting them win. Whoever set that fire wanted to scare us apart. I say we don't give them the satisfaction." She studied his soot-stained face, the bandages on his hands, the stubborn set of his jaw. "You're impossible." "You're still holding my hand." Somehow she couldn't make herself let go. "Eli." "I know. Careful. Proper. Reputation." He brought her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her palm. "But I'm done being careful when it comes to you." Clara fled before she could do something truly foolish, like kiss him senseless in Martha Quinn's boarding house. She had classes to teach, appearances to maintain, a life to continue despite everything. But that evening, when she brought him supper. She found him sketching with his bandaged hands. The drawing was rough, but recognizable, the stable in flames. Pete emerging with his rescued cats. For the boy, Eli explained. Something to remember his bravery by. His bravery, you're the one who... He went in for creatures he loved. That takes a different kind of courage than training or duty. He looked up at her. The kind you show every day, teaching when they want you gone. Clara sat on the chair beside his bed, studied the drawing. We make quite a pair, don't we? The woman who wants too much and the man who gives too much. Maybe that's what makes us fit. He set aside the sketch, caught her hand again. Dance with me Saturday. Show them all we're not broken by their hate. Your hands are bandaged. You smell like smoke. You can barely stand without swaying. Minor details. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. Say yes, Clara. She thought about the fire, about Pete's terrified face, about how close she'd come to losing this man who'd somehow become essential. Thought too about Mrs. Garrett's campaign, about Donnelly's missing presence, about a town divided between past and future. Yes, she said finally. But if you collapse during a waltz, I'm leaving you on the floor. His grin was bright as flame, warm as summer. Fair enough. That night, Clara wrote in the journal. Asterisk, November 22, 1876. Asterisk, asterisk, fire and revelation. Someone tried to burn down more than a stable tonight. They tried to burn down hope, connection, the bridges we've been building. They failed. Asterisk-y saved a life tonight. Risked everything for a boy and his cats. The town saw heroism where they'd been told to see villainy. Truth has a way of revealing itself in flame. Asterisk. He asked me to dance. After everything, the violence, the rumors, the fire, he wants to dance. As if music and movement could be rebellion. Maybe they can. Asterisk, I shouldn't want this much. But watching him walk into those flames taught me something. The alternative to wanting too much is losing everything. I choose the wanting. She closed the journal, banked her own fire, prepared for bed. In 3 days, she'd dance with a man whose bandaged hands had saved lives. She'd wear something beautiful and hold her head high and dare anyone to diminish what they'd built from ashes. The stable could be rebuilt. Trust, once earned in flame, was harder to burn down. And whatever came next, Donnelly's revenge, Mrs. Garrett's spite, the town's judgment, she'd face it. She wasn't alone anymore. That truth, forged in fire and tested by smoke, warmed her more than any flame. The double-bar ranch had been transformed for the barn dance. Lanterns hung from every beam, casting warm light over the swept floor and makeshift stage where musicians tuned their instruments. The November air was crisp but not bitter, and Sarah McKendrick had arranged braziers around the barn's edges to keep the chill at bay. Clara stood at the entrance, smoothing the midnight blue dress she'd finally retrieved from her wardrobe, the same dress she'd worn to that disastrous Engineer Society ball in New York. Tonight, she'd reclaim it for better memories. You clean up nice, Joe Harper said beside her, wearing her best dress, a hand-me-down from Sarah McKendrick, altered to fit. Though you look like you're heading to war, not a dance. Aren't they sometimes the same thing? Joe's laugh was nervous. Pa almost didn't let me come, said barn dances lead to barn troubles, but Mrs. McKendrick sent a wagon special, said I was her guest. Hard to argue with that. The barn was already filling with families, ranch hands, townspeople. Clara recognized faces from both sides of the recent conflict. The fire had shifted something in Dry Hollow's dynamics, but tensions still simmered beneath the surface. Miss Ellison. Sarah McKendrick appeared, resplendent in green velvet. Don't you look lovely, and entirely too serious for a celebration? I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, Clara admitted. This feels too much like a trap. Oh, it is a trap, just not the kind you're thinking. Sarah's smile was sly. I've invited everyone, including Constance Garrett and her faction. Let them see you dancing, laughing, surrounded by people whose lives you've improved. Kill them with your happiness. Before Clara could respond, a murmur ran through the crowd. She turned to see Eli entering, and her breath caught. He'd traded his work clothes for a black suit that emphasized his height and breadth. His hands were still lightly bandaged, but he moved with his usual grace. When his eyes found hers across the room, the corner of his mouth lifted in that small smile she'd come to treasure. "Now that," Joe whispered, "is a man who knows what he wants." Clara felt heat climb her neck. "Josephine Harper." "Just stating facts. He's been standing straighter since you came to town. You've been smiling more since he started coming around. Don't need technical drawings to see those lines connect." Eli made his way through the crowd, stopping to shake hands. Accept thanks for the fire rescue. But his path led inevitably to Clara. "Miss Ellison." He gave a formal bow that didn't quite hide the warmth in his eyes. "Might I have the first dance?" "Your hands." "We'll manage fine if you don't squeeze too tight." He offered his arm. "Shall we give them something prettier to talk about than fires and feuds?" Clara took his arm, let him lead her to the dance floor as the fiddles struck up a waltz. Other couples joined them, but she was aware only of Eli, the careful way he held her, protective of his injuries, but still secure, the way he moved with surprising elegance for a man who spent his days on horseback. "Where did a cowboy learn to waltz?" she asked as he guided her through a turn. "My mother said a gentleman should know how to make a lady feel like she's floating." His hand at her waist drew her slightly closer. "Am I succeeding?" Passably. But she was floating, caught between earth and air, between propriety and the dangerous warmth spreading through her. They danced in silence for a moment, and Clara became aware they were being watched. "Mrs." Garrett stood near the punch bowl, face pinched with disapproval. But around her, Clara saw smiles, nods of approval, even from unexpected sources. "They're staring," she murmured. "Let them." Eli spun her gently, brought her back close. "You saved Pete's mother from grief. I kept their horses from burning. We've earned one dance without apology." "Just one." His eyes darkened. "Clara Ellison, are you flirting with me at a respectable barn dance?" "Stating facts," she echoed Joe's words. "A technical observation of probable outcomes." His laugh rumbled through his chest. "God help me! You're going to be the death of me." "You already tried that with the fire. I'd prefer less dramatic proofs of devotion." The music ended, but Eli didn't immediately release her. For a moment they stood, hands clasped, bodies close, the whole barn watching. Then Sarah McKendrick's voice cut through. "Don't hog the lady. Eli, others want to dance too." Reluctantly, Eli stepped back, but before leaving, he leaned close, whispered, "Save me another, the last one of the night." Clara danced with others after that. Magnus Olson, who thanked her for teaching his son, Robert McKendrick, who praised her water system designs, even shy Pete Williams, hero of Cats, who stumbled through a reel while blushing furiously. Between dances, she taught, not formally, but in natural conversation, showing Joe and the other girls how to calculate the barn's dimensions from pacing the walls, explaining to interested ranch hands how the lantern placement created optimal light distribution. Even when she wasn't trying, she couldn't stop teaching, and gradually a small crowd gathered, eager to learn. "Still corrupting our youth, I see." Clara turned to find Mrs. Garrett behind her, Donnelly at her shoulder. He'd reappeared that afternoon, claiming he'd been visiting family, but his eyes held guilt and something meaner. "Mrs. Garrett, Mr. Donnelly, enjoying the dance. I prefer gatherings with more selectivity." "Mrs." Garrett's gaze swept over Clara's students with distaste. But Sarah insisted on this democratic mixing. Very modern of her. "Democracy is modern," Clara agreed pleasantly, "as is education. advancement, and judging people by their character rather than their station. Pretty words. Donnelly stepped closer, voice low. Shame about that fire. Accidents happen so easily around here. Be terrible if they happened again. Ice ran down Clara's spine, but before she could respond, Eli materialized at her elbow. Donnelly. His tone was conversational, but Clara felt the tension coiled beneath. Thought you were visiting family. Just got back today. Funny. Marshall Dixon was looking for you. Questions about kerosene purchases. Eli's smile was sharp as a blade. You should check in with him. Clear up any misunderstandings. Donnelly's face darkened. You accusing me of something? Just sharing information. Neighborly concern. Eli's hand settled on Clara's back, protective and possessive. We all want to keep Dry Hollow safe, don't we? Mrs. Garrett tugged Donnelly away, hissing something about discretion, but the threat lingered like smoke. He all but confessed, Clara said quietly. He's scared. Good. Eli guided her away from the crowd. Dixon's been investigating. Found kerosene cans hidden near Donnelly's place. Not enough to arrest yet, but enough to watch. And if he tries again, then he'll find out what happens when you threaten what I... He stopped, jaw tight. What? He looked at her, and she saw everything in his eyes: protection, possession, something deeper and more dangerous than either. Dance with me again, he said instead of answering. It's the last song. The final dance was slower, sweeter. Other couples filled the floor, but space seemed to form around Clara and Eli, as if the world recognized something private happening in public view. I used to dance with Tom. Eli said suddenly, when we were boys. He'd play the girl's part, complain the whole time, said I was preparing for something important. His voice roughened. Think he'd approve of tonight? I think he'd be happy you're living instead of just existing. That's your doing. He pulled her closer. Propriety forgotten. You came here all sharp edges and determination, teaching anyone who'd listen. Made me remember why learning matters, why building matters, why mornings matter when you've got someone to... He stopped again, but Clara heard the unfinished words. Someone to love. The truth of it hung between them, bright and terrifying as flame. The music ended. Around them, couples separated, gathered wraps, prepared for leave-taking. But Eli and Clara remained, hands clasped, neither willing to break the moment. Miss Clara Joe appeared, breathless with excitement. Did you see I taught the Murphy twins about calculating board feet for construction? They want to learn more. The spell broken, Clara turned to her student, but she kept hold of Eli's hand, a declaration as clear as any words. The evening wound down with promises: more lessons, more dances, more bridges built between Dry Hollow's divided camps. Clara found herself at the center of a warm knot of well-wishers, accepted in a way she hadn't been weeks ago. Thank you, she told Sarah McKendrick as they prepared to leave. This was... successful, strategic, satisfying. Sarah grinned. All of the above. You've got them seeing you as a person now, not just a problem. Build on that. In the wagon ride back to town, Joe dozed against Clara's shoulder while Eli drove. The night was clear. Stars scattered like spilled salt across black velvet. You changed things tonight, Eli said quietly. Showed them learning can be joyful, not threatening. We changed things. Your rescue, my teaching together, we're harder to dismiss. Together. He tested the word. I like the sound of that. At the boarding house, he helped her down from the wagon, hands lingering at her waist. Joe had already stumbled inside, yawning farewells. Thank you for the dances, Clara said. Both of them. Thank you for saving them. He touched her face, thumb brushing her cheek. That first waltz, the last slow dance, I'll be remembering those on cold nights. Eli. So many words crowded her throat. Too much, Too fast, too dangerous, but also too late to pretend she didn't feel it. "I know," he said softly. "Not yet, but soon. When Donnelly's dealt with, when the town settles, when you're ready to risk your reputation on a cowboy with more past than future. You have exactly as much future as past, more, even." She caught his hand. "Don't talk about yourself that way." "Then how should I talk?" "Like a man who saved lives, like someone who supports education and progress, like—" She stopped, but he heard it anyway. "Like someone you could love." The word hung between them, simple and enormous. "Yes," she whispered. "Like that." He kissed her then, there on Martha Quinn's porch with winter air sharp around them, and probably half the boarding house watching through windows. It was brief, gentle, a promise more than passion, but Clara felt it rearrange her, shift her foundations like an earthquake. "Soon," he said against her lips. "When it's safe. When I can court you proper without bringing danger to your door." "I'm not afraid of danger." "I know." He stepped back, smiled. "That's what terrifies me." She watched him drive away, touched her lips where the kiss lingered. Inside. She ignored Martha's knowing look, climbed to her room, and wrote, *, November 25, 1876 *, I danced tonight, waltzed with a man who walks through fire, taught mathematics between reels, faced down threats with my chin high. I remembered who I was before fear made me careful. *E kissed me, just once, soft as snowfall, but I felt it like spring breaking through winter, like hope taking root in frozen ground. They still want me gone Donnelly with his threats, Mrs. Garrett with her propriety. But tonight I wasn't alone. Tonight I was part of something larger than my ambitions or his grief. Soon, he said, when it's safe, but I'm learning safety is an illusion in a place where stables burn and hearts catch fire. All we have is now, and the courage to reach for what we want. I shouldn't want this much, but I do. And tonight, surrounded by music and possibility, that felt like strength instead of weakness. She closed the journal, prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, Donnelly's investigation, lessons to teach, bridges to build between who Dry Hollow was and who it could become. But tonight, she'd danced. Tonight, she'd been kissed under stars by a man who saw her whole. Tonight, she'd felt the town shift, just a little, toward acceptance. It was enough. It was everything. It was a beginning. The first snow of December fell like a benediction, soft and silent, covering Dry Hollow's sins and scars in pristine white. Clara stood at her studio window, watching the world transform, when Eli appeared in the doorway. He'd taken to doing that, arriving without fanfare, filling her small space with his quiet presence. "Marshal Dixon arrested Donnelly this morning," he said without preamble. "Found evidence linking him to the fire. He'll stand trial come spring." Relief flooded through Clara, so sudden it left her dizzy. "It's over." "That part is—" Eli moved closer, and she saw the exhaustion in his face, the weight he'd been carrying. "Mrs. Garrett's leaving too. Seems her husband's had enough of her campaigns. They're moving to Denver." "Because of us. Because of her. We were just the final straw." He touched her shoulder. Gentle. "You're safe now. We both are." Safe. The word felt foreign after months of fighting for every breath, every student, every small victory. Clara turned from the window to face him fully. "Now what?" "Now." He studied her with those gray eyes that saw too much. "Now I can court you proper. If you'll have me. If you're not tired of cowboys and their complications." "Eli." Her voice came out breathless. "I'm the complication. Too much education, too much ambition, too much everything." "Just enough," he interrupted. "Just exactly enough. Clara, I've been half alive since Tom died, going through motions, existing without purpose. Then you blazed into town with your precise drawings and fierce determination, teaching anyone who'd listen, refusing to be made small. He moved closer, crowding her against the desk. You woke me up, made me remember why morning comes, why building matters, why a man should fight for more than just survival.
You fought for me, she whispered, with your fists, with your reputation. I'd do it again, every bruise, every whisper, every flame.
His hands framed her face, careful of her dignity even now.
I love you, Clara Ellison.
Love your stubborn mind and your teaching heart and the way you see possibilities where others see problems. Tears spilled down her cheeks, unexpected and unstoppable.
I shouldn't want this much, she said,
echoing words that had become her refrain.
But I do. I want you. Want us. Want a life built on something stronger than other people's expectations.
Then stop fighting it. His thumbs wiped her tears. Stay here. Stay with me. Build that school you dream about. Teach every soul in Wyoming if you want. Just stay.
Yes.
The word escaped on a sob.
Yes to all of it. To you, to us, to staying.
He kissed her then, deep and sure, a claiming and a promise combined. Clara melted into him, felt the solid strength of his body, the careful passion in his hands. This was what she'd run toward without knowing it, not just a place to use her skills, but a person who saw her whole and wanted every complicated piece. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Eli rested his forehead against hers. There's something else, something I need to show you. He led her to the window, pointed to the empty lot across from the boarding house. I bought it, with Tom's money. Figured it was time to build something that would make him proud. Eli? A school, he continued. A real one, with proper desks and windows for good light and rooms for different subjects. Sarah McKendrick's already pledged support, even got interest from some folks in Cheyenne about making it official. Clara stared at the snow-covered lot, seeing not empty land, but possibility. Classrooms filled with eager minds, Joe Harper learning engineering, ranch hands becoming surveyors, women discovering they were more than decorations or drudges. We'll build it together, Eli said. You design it, I'll help construct it. Make it everything this town needs but doesn't know it wants yet. A school. She tested the word, felt its weight and wonder. Our school. If you'll have me as partner. She turned in his arms, saw the vulnerability beneath his steady strength. Partners in all things. All things. He pulled something from his pocket, a simple gold ring, worn smooth with age. This was my mother's. Kept it in a drawer since she passed. Waiting for you, turns out. Clara's breath caught.
Eli Thatcher, are you proposing to me in my converted closet of a studio?
Would you prefer somewhere fancier? I could take you to the hotel. Or...
No.
She caught his hands, ring and all.
No, this is perfect. This is where I rebuilt myself, where you brought broken pencils, where we started becoming us.
Fresh tears came. Yes, to the ring, the school, the life. Yes to all of it. He slipped the ring on her finger, kissed her again with reverent joy. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in fresh beginnings. That evening, the boarding house dining room erupted in celebration when Clara showed her ring. Martha Quinn actually smiled, a true smile that transformed her stern face. Joe Harper squealed and hugged Clara so tight she couldn't breathe. A spring wedding, Martha asked. Already planning. Sooner, Eli said. No point waiting when we've already weathered the worst storms.
January, then. New year, new beginnings.
Martha nodded approvingly.
I'll handle the arrangements.
Word spread through Dry Hollow like wildfire. But this time the whispers were warm. The technical illustrator and the cowboy. The teacher and the hero of the stable fire. Some called it unexpected. Others, like Sarah McKendrick, called it inevitable. Knew it from the moment he carried your trunk. Sarah told Clara later. Man doesn't gentle his voice like that for just anyone. Plans took shape with dizzying speed. The school design that Clara sketched became more elaborate, more real with each iteration. Eli spent evenings learning to read her technical drawings, adding practical insights. They worked side by side, building their future one careful line at a time. The wedding was small, just friends who'd become family, students who'd become supporters. Clara wore her mother's lace veil with her blue dress, carried winter roses from Sarah's greenhouse. Eli waited at the altar in his black suit, gray eyes bright with joy and promise. Reverend Morrison spoke about building not just structures, but communities, not just lives, but legacies, about two people who'd found each other at the edges of loss and chose to create something new from the ashes. "Do you, Clara, take this man?"
Yes.
She didn't wait for the full question.
Yes to all of it.
Laughter rippled through the church. Eli grinned, that full smile that transformed him from grieving brother to living man. After the ceremony, they stood in the snow-covered lot where their school would rise. Wedding guests had dispersed to Martha's boarding house for the reception, but Clara and Eli lingered, seeing their shared dream. "No regrets?" Eli asked, arms wrapped around her from behind.
None. She leaned into his warmth. I came here running from a life that didn't fit, found a life I could build to my own specifications.
"Our specifications now."
Our specifications.
She turned in his arms, snow catching in her hair like stars.
I shouldn't want this much, you, the school, the future we're drawing. But I do. Good.
He kissed her, soft and sweet. "Want it all, want more, want everything we can build with these hands and hearts." Later, warm in the room they now shared at the boarding house until their own home was built come spring. Clara wrote the final entry in Joe's mother's journal. January 15, 1877 ***. I write this as Clara Ellison Thatcher, which still seems miraculous, married to a man who sees my ambition as strength, not flaw, planning a school that will change lives, surrounded by students who've become family. They said I wanted too much. They were right. I wanted respect, purpose, love, belonging. I wanted to matter in a world that preferred women silent and small. I wanted so much it drove me from New York to Wyoming, from safety to chance. And here, in this unlikely place, I found it all. Not easily, not without cost, but found it nonetheless. *E sleeps beside me as I write, worn out from working on school plans. His hand rests on my hip, anchoring me even in dreams. Tomorrow we'll rise and build more structures and lives and possibilities. But tonight, I'm complete in ways I never dared imagine. To whoever reads this someday, want more, want everything, the world will tell you it's too much. You're too much. Don't listen. Pack your courage and your skills and find the place where your muchness becomes exactly enough. I shouldn't have wanted this much. Thank God I did anyway. She closed the journal, set it aside, and curled into her husband's warmth. Outside, snow continued to fall on Dry Hollow, on the empty lot that would become a school, on a town slowly learning that progress came in unexpected packages. Clara Ellison Thatcher had wanted too much, and in wanting, in refusing to want less, she'd found everything. The school would rise come spring. Students would fill its halls for generations. But tonight, in the quiet of winter's embrace, a woman who'd been called too much finally knew she was exactly enough. And in the circle of her cowboy's arms, that was everything. Thank you for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Clara and Eli's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Please leave a comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I'd love to hear your thoughts and connect with fellow lovers of Western romance. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850 and hit that like button. And if this story moved you, please please hit the hype button to help more people discover these tales of love and courage in the American frontier. Until next time, partners.